Hey, it's Yay for Yarn, and today I'm reviewing the new Variations yarn from Laurel Hill. So, Laurel Hill sent me some of these yarns to try out. I got a couple skeins of their new Variations DK, which is a Superwash Merino. So, thanks so much to Laurel Hill for sending me these yarns to review, and let's get started. Alright, so first off, this is Variations DK, and it is 100% Superwash Merino wool, which in my opinion is one of the softest wools that you can get. Even if you think that wool is scratchy, if you think you don't like wool, although it is possible to have a wool allergy, many people who are irritated by wool just have sensitive skin and not necessarily an allergic reaction. So if your skin is sensitive to wool and it feels prickly to you, then I would highly recommend trying a Superwash Merino because these types of wool yarns have no prickliness to them whatsoever. They are just soft and squishy and smooth. So that is one of my favorite fibers to work with. And this yarn also comes in a fingering weight version, which is still Superwash Merino. I have two different colors here, and by the way, these are made from Australian Merino. This particular color is called Burnt Amber, and this one, which I think is my favorite of the two, is called Emerald Waters. So this one is kind of a lovely, it's not exactly orange, it's kind of more orange toned, but it is a more muted orange-brown type of color. And I think it is a very, very lovely color for fall and winter. Very pretty shade of amber. And what makes these yarns look so special is that they are tonal dyed, which basically means that, like, if you go to Joann Fabric and you buy a skein of, say, Lion brand yarn that's a solid color, most solid colored yarns that you would get at a big box store, they might sometimes have a strand of a different color that is twisted into it, but they do not have this tonal dyed look. So the tonal dye basically means that they have dyed this in such a way that the dye does not absorb evenly through the yarn, and that leaves us with some patches of yarn that are slightly darker, some that are slightly lighter, but it's still all the same color. So it adds a lot of depth to the finished fabric because of that tonal colorway. So the Emerald Waters is, I think, a very deep, lovely teal blue-green color. This is definitely one of my favorite colors to work with. I really love the dark teal colors, especially when they're kind of a mix between blue and green. And the tonal dye in this is very lovely because you do get a lot of those deeper shades mixed with some of the lighter ones. And I think this color is my favorite, but they are both very pretty. As I mentioned before, this is a DK weight yarn. So it's not as thick as worsted, and I actually think this is a little bit more of a thinner DK weight yarn. This is thinner than a lot of DK weight yarns that I have worked with. So it is definitely a lighter weight yarn. Now I can tell from the yarn tails on this that this is spun in a little bit different way than a lot of yarns are. So this is spun where that each little ply of yarn, each little thread that the yarn is made from is a kind of twisted like a rope. And then all of those little ropes are twisted together. So the texture of the strand of yarn here is extremely smooth and low fuzz, which is one thing that I really like to see in a yarn. Fuzzy yarns can be great too, but I personally tend to gravitate more towards the low fuzz yarns. So the strand here is very, very, very smooth. It looks smooth and it feels smooth. Of course, because it's Superwash Merino, it has that lovely, soft, squishy texture. But the real test is to see how it knits up and how it looks when it's crocheted. So I'm going to go ahead and wind these into cakes and do some test swatches to kind of play around with the yarn and get a feel for how it works up. Alright, so I have thoroughly tested these yarns out. I made a project out of the teal green one, and I did some test swatching with a couple different stitch patterns in the orange version. So I ended up making with this yarn kind of a unique project, I guess. This is sort of a tutorial filming tool belt, I guess you would call it. So I can wear this while I'm making videos and have all of my tools within reach without them being visible on my table. So I have a slot for knitting needles, one for my little chibi tapestry needle set right there. I have my measuring tape in here, my scissors. I made my crochet hook slot giant for my large handled hooks. And I did this in almost all single crochet. So all the fabric is single crochet. And I did use a smaller hook. Now this swatch over here is also crocheted. And I used a little bit bigger hook. This is an H hook, I believe. And this is rows, alternating rows of single crochet and double crochet. So this one with a little bit larger hook is more soft and pliable and fluid, whereas this one I did with a smaller hook to give it more structure. Now, overall, I really enjoyed working with both of these yarns. They have a very nice quality feel to them. Really, the only issue I experienced was some occasional splitting, and that was partly because I was using a small hook and working at a tighter gauge, and partly because that's just the nature of yarns that have a fine texture with many plies. So if you look here at the end of this yarn, I've kind of untwisted it here. See if you can see that on camera. But it has a lot of small plies that make up the strand of yarn. And when a yarn has a bunch of smaller strands that go together to make the full strand of yarn, a lot of times that does create a very soft, smooth textured yarn, which this is. But the one very slight trade-off is that you can experience a little bit of splitting occasionally. Splitting in general is not a measure of quality, it's just the nature of some types of yarns. And I didn't think the splitting in this yarn was bad. I just did experience a couple times, every now and then where it would split. But that would not deter me from using this yarn at all. I really enjoyed working with it, and I really like the tonal look to it. So if you can kind of see the subtle color variations and how this works up in a fabric, this is what I love about a tonal dyed yarn. You get different shades of the same color that pop up in the fabric. So it gives it a lot of texture and dimension without being too multicolored where it gets too busy. So this one, you can kind of see, because I used a hook size that's more suited for this yarn, I made just a double crochet alternating with single crochet rows swatch here. And of course, neither of these items are blocked yet, so they do still curl a little bit. But you can see how that even before blocking, this is a very soft, pliable, nicely stretchy fabric. So I would definitely recommend this yarn for lots of different types of wearable projects. So this would be great for sweaters, accessories, scarves, and anything that would be up against the skin, because this yarn has zero scratchiness to it whatsoever, and that's because it's made of Superwash Merino wool. So overall, yes, this is definitely a nice quality yarn, and I would absolutely use it again and recommend it for all types of soft wearable projects, especially if you want to be able to wash it. And as far as the price goes, compared to other yarns of this type, it is pretty similar in price at $22 per hank of 100 grams of yarn. That is pretty comparable. That's not the very most inexpensive option if you're looking for hand-dyed yarn, but it is a pretty comparable, pretty average price for hand-dyed yarn, especially if you compare it to some of the more high-end, really expensive brands of hand-dyed yarn. There are some brands, I won't name them here, but that tend to be some of the more popular hand-dyed yarns. Before independent yarn dyers were really a thing, they had a lot of pretty pricey hand-dyed yarns. So compared to those, this is definitely a more affordable option, and I would definitely recommend this yarn if you are looking for a soft, nice quality, durable but not stiff or rough or scratchy superwash wool yarn with a tonal hand dye to it. It has a very pretty color texture to it, and it feels very nice against the skin. It would make a beautiful project no matter what you decide to make. So if you'd like to give this yarn a try, I will link it down below in the video description, and you can go check it out. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know if you've ever tried this yarn in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe, making sure you click the little bell next to the subscribe button to be notified of new videos. Thanks for watching.